The election is over. Oh, wait, not quite yet. But there's cause for unity. That's all we've been preaching the entire time here on the Brewmance. So let's get together over one of our favorite adult beverages. I say one of because there are as many. My name is Rob Hunter. His name is Mike Russell. We are the Brewmance, Arizona's only craft beer radio show. Each week we grab a beer of the week, featured on the show, rate and review it for you. Mike Russell, what are we drinking today?
Historic Brewing. I saw this, had to have it. Very excited about the title. I'm a big George Strait fan. So Oceanfront Property in Arizona Lager was rated his 6th best song. We'll get to the song a little bit later, but Oceanfront Property in Arizona, great song, and I'm excited about this beer. So I'm going to give it a try. And we are talking about post-election unity. Now, the election isn't over, as Rob mentioned. And what we've been preaching on Russell and Hunter for the past week and a half is simple. Calm the bleep down. Grab a beer, grab some friends, and calm down. Take it easy. Take a breath. Both sides. I don't care what side you're on. Just relax. We will not have a president-elect. I don't care what the cable news tells you. We won't have a president-elect until December 14th, right, Rob?
Correct. The Electoral College votes meets, and then there's some possible alternative scenarios where maybe state legislatures don't, but we don't need to get into that.
Either way, we're going to have a president-elect on December 14th. Until then, we don't. We have one president of the United States, and that's it. So, yes, the people have spoken. I get it. And the people are speaking. I get it. And recounts in Georgia, I get it. But you just need to relax. It's out of your hands completely. Just, as my mom would say, just be the chillaxing.
Yeah, just be the chillaxing. But look, here's the idea. So, if you look at the political spectrum, and the craft beer world is very similar to this because there are so many people that like to exclude others because of their beer choices. So, you're an IPA drinker. Well, why would you drink anything other than IPAs? Well, because why do I need a reason? So you have this sort of group of IPA drinkers. I'm using this as a theoretical example, who won't talk to anybody who drinks lagers or pilsners or dark beers or anything like that.
Right.
Then you have like kind of the beer snob community that maybe only drinks barrel aged and doesn't want to hang out with people that drink regular craft beer. So we segment ourselves anyways. And the same thing is happening because the bubbles that we can live in and the echo chamber that we can get involved in, we can reinforce all the time. You don't actually have to talk to anyone you disagree with anyone because you can go to work, not talk about politics.
Good point.
You can get on Facebook, you can get on Twitter, you can get on TikTok, you can get on Parler, you can get on whatever you want, and surround yourself only with like-minded people. So the chances are that you interact with someone who might disagree with you on one issue becomes smaller. So then when someone disagrees with you on one issue, you throw a fit. It's like, okay, no, that's why we open these beers at the Brewmance, crack them open and say, let's have conversations, because what's happening politically, I'm going to call it the Trump movement just for a second, because I think it's bigger than conservatism even. It's a Trump movement of which 72 million people voted for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But you're already seeing fractures in the Trump movement. So you have all these Trump backers now fighting with each other. And I'm like, this is not how you preserve this. You have to have conversations. You can't yell at each other. And the same thing the Democrats are doing too. You've got a progressive, and not to get super political on you, but you got a progressive, really left-wing socialist part of the Democrats that's fracturing with the regular Democrats. So everybody's fracturing at the moment. We're like, yo, all of us can hang out, crack a beer, and chill.
Please. I was hanging out with my buddies from Wildlife for Tomorrow earlier in the week, and there were 2 conservatives and 2 liberals. And we were just hanging out, chatting at the end. We talked a little bit of politics, but here's what happened. We were talking about beer, and we're talking about the outdoors, talking about beer and conservation and some cool collaborations that are coming up. And it was a cool conversation. And I stopped and said, see, look, there's 2 of us that agree, and the other 2 that agree with each other, and we don't agree with the others. But here we are agreeing on this, and we're having a good time. We're laughing. We're getting excited. We're talking about collaborating. We're talking about the process, and that's what craft beer does. So this is a good opportunity to just grab beer. Katy Perry, God bless her. Katy Perry and I don't agree with a lot of things. Katy Perry is very easy on the eyes, so I'm in. Why not?
True story.
And so she's very talented. She sold a lot more albums than I have. And I just dated myself by saying albums. So she was a big Biden supporter, and she tweeted out that she was going to reach out to her family and friends that didn't support Biden and just say, "Hey, we're still good. Love you. Let's chat. It's all good." She was eviscerated for that. And the two liberal friends I was with from Wildlife for Tomorrow, hanging out this week, they were saying, we're tired of this. We're so sick of this noise. Everybody's posting on our this anti-Trump stuff and the pro-Biden stuff. No. This is my social media feed. This is just what this isn't for that. There's other places that are ugly for that.
Yeah.
This isn't the place for that.
You think about the act of voting too. And I get in trouble for this because we make voting seem like it's the literal most important thing that we can do in our lives. I'm like, okay, let's logically think about that for a minute. You're going to fill in a circle. Like in Arizona, I don't know how other states do it. We fill in a circle, like the old Scantron test or the SATs that we took or ACTs. That is your level of involvement in voting. If all you do is vote, if you never run for office, if you never go to town hall meetings or city council meetings, you literally are filling in a circle. How can that simple act become so important that we hate each other over the circle we fill in? We don't control what the person does that we fill in the circle. We don't control the outcome of the election. We literally represent one vote unless you voted twice, and that's illegal. So what I'm getting at here is let's chill on that part of it and say, so what? Why is our identity, so many people's identity is literally built around a circle you fill in? My identity is much more complex than simply filling in a circle with a Sharpie.
Because it's your identity. It's not someone else's identity. It's yours. And the thought that who we vote for, the thought that that person is perfect, that person is going to be the savior of all of my ideals and everything that I hold dear is childish.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And there's been several people that I've looked up to and that idolized in my life that I learned later on in life, they were punks. They were not very good people. And at the same time, I can segment that out. I can compartmentalize that and say, look, this is what this, and I'll use Steve Jobs as an example. My gosh, I'm sitting here with my brand new iPhone 12 Pro Max. This thing is the most powerful thing I've ever dealt with technologically. And it comes from that dude. I'm like, this is pretty cool. If he ran for office, would I vote for him? Probably not. There's a lot of cool things that he did and accomplished in his life. Did I vote for Joe Biden? No, I didn't. But I'm sure he's done some good stuff in his life. Sure, he's been a good dude to a lot of people. Oh, I know he's made a lot of people a lot of money. Cool. That's it. That's your bag. And I'm all about that. I'm not judging you for that. Or if you support Joe Biden, I don't judge you for that. Who cares? I shouldn't be judged for not supporting Joe Biden.
And that's the key. Why do we love to judge each other so much? And that's pretty revealing. When you judge other people, it's revealing about yourself. If you're willing to peel back and look at yourself and go, why does, say, a Trump supporter, why does that person who supports Trump make me feel a certain way? Why do I get all riled up about it?
Triggered.
Well, it is. But what does the trigger tell you about yourself? Because we all have triggers. Every single one of us has emotional triggers. We just don't always talk about it.
It's people making loud eating noises. That's my trigger.
That is a good trigger.
I will.
You got to figure out why does it bother you, and
because it's gross.
Well, and that's it. Like they're all revealing, and it's how we treat each other that's going to matter going forward. Because ultimately, this country's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Most people would agree that being an American is winning the lottery. Mike, you call it winning the genetic lottery.
Yep.
Because we were born in America, we had nothing to do with it. We just showed up one day, like, hey, here we are. Coolest thing.
Right out. Yeah.
So we have something in common. And we all want to make America great, keep it great, whatever. The only way we can do that is do it together, quite honestly, while disagreeing along the way, drinking beer.
Yeah, here's another one. Well, it goes. I hate that. Triggers me. I'm triggered now.
We all have triggers. That's what I do love to say. You can't complain about snowflakes if you are, in fact, a snowflake.
True.
If snowflakes make you triggered, you're being snowflakey about the snowflakes.
I just laugh. It's fun to laugh at snowflakiness.
Yeah, well, because a lot of it is ludicrous.
But the funny thing is, a lot of people that we brand as snowflakes aren't really snowflakes at all. They get triggered by really odd things, and they can fix that. It's not. It doesn't need to define them and who they are as people. They just need to take a nice check of themselves and really find out how tough they are in life, because they have it. They've survived this long. Life has kicked them in the pills enough that they're a pretty tough human being because they've survived this long. So just realize that, stop getting triggered by things, and you'll be all right.
And realize that the world does not revolve around you and your feelings. It's not.
Yes, it does.
It hasn't stopped for me yet. One day, maybe. This is the Brewmance on the radio, Arizona's only craft beer radio show. His name is Mike Russell. My name is Rob Hutch. You can find us on Instagram at _Brewmance. And also check out our podcast on the iHeartRadio app, separate from this radio show. This week, we're drinking Arizona Lager, the oceanfront property from Historic Brewing. We're going to rate and review it a little bit later on the show here on 550 KFY. In a moment, it's all about, I don't know what. It's all about Veterans Day.
Veterans Day.
Be back in a second.
A very belated very happy belated Veterans Day. That's exactly what I meant to say from all of us at the Brewmance to all that have served. And it is a big, big deal to me, Veterans Day, to honor the families of veterans as well, because when their loved one is overseas protecting our great freedoms of this country and our allies, they are sacrificing as well. So a big toast and a happy Veterans Day to all the families as well. I know it's Saturday, but this I know happened Wednesday. I get it, but that's why I said the word belated. This is the Brewmance. He's Rob Hunter. I'm Mike Russell. We are celebrating our freedoms of drinking good craft beer defended by our great men and women of the military. Oceanfront property, Arizona Lager from Historic Brewing up there in very chilly Flagstaff, Arizona. It is an Arizona lager, and I'm very excited to get Rob's opinion on this. It is a little departure from our standard fare, which is usually something with a pale variety, something very hoppy. So I'm excited to see what he's thinking about this.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in a few minutes. But there's so many things about Veterans Day we want to touch on, because there's nothing better than buying a veteran a beer. Bringing them to a brewery, buying them a beer, just sitting and talking with a veteran, finding out their stories. Because we talked about just a few minutes ago about how great this country is. And one of the reasons is because there have been so many people, millions of people that have volunteered to serve this country. Saying, all right, if there is a need, I'm going to sign up, I'm going to serve, and I'm going to go fight for this country, fight for freedom. Others have been conscripted into service. We saw that in World War II. We saw that in Vietnam. Luckily, since Vietnam, there hasn't been a draft service. But it's the same thing. Some people got told this is what they had to do for the country, and they still went and did it. Like, that is, how do you say thank you enough? You can't. It's impossible to.
So our friends at Saddle Mountain Brewery do their best to do just that, as well as first responders. You can go to Saddle Mountain Brewery out in the West Valley, and what a fantastic place to go. I highly recommend it. Fantastic food, fantastic atmosphere, great people, great beer, and you can pay it forward and buy a veteran or first responder a beer.
And it's a cool program that runs till the end of the month. So we talked to the owner of Saddle Mountain, Laura Hansen, and her husband, Jacob Hansen, on our podcast, which you can find the video of on Facebook to learn more about the program. And we touched on them, too, about the impacts of COVID and how they've been doing and ups and downs. So it's definitely worth a watch. But the cool part about this thank you for your service program at Saddle Mountain Brewing is you go in and you sit there and you're like, all right, I'm going to get myself a beer. And they give you that option to buy a beer for a veteran, which this time also includes first responders like police, firefighters, EMTs, and active duty soldiers. And they released a beer on Wednesday of this week on Veterans Day. It's an American lager. And they used Liberty hops. See what they're going, but they did it
so cool
with some active duty soldiers stationed at Luke Air Force Base. They came in and had a brew day, and they made the beer. So it's really, really, really kind of cool and kind of special. But on that little thank you for service, you can write a note. So you can tell a veteran why you're thankful for their service, or a cop or whatever, so that when the cop comes in, when the active duty soldier comes in, when the veteran comes in, that next beer is on you to them. Like, how cool is that?
So cool. What a great way to say thank you.
And my other favorite part about the story, which we're going to encourage veterans and cops and firefighters, EMTs, etc., take the beers, because veterans often are like, nah, I don't want the free beer. I'll pay for my own beer. No, we bought this for you. So take our charitable beer. Just enjoy it, please, 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 please.
Yeah, absolutely. And say the words. Yes, I am a veteran. Yeah, sure. I'd like a free beer. Why not? You'd have earned the thing. This has nothing to do with you scamming any system. This doesn't have to do with you gaming anything. People bought you a beer. They bought you a beer. So go get it. It's okay. It's there. It's already there. It's already paid for. It's already done. This isn't some kind of charity. This is simply thank you. And it's a beer. It's not like we're trying to buy you an extension on your house. We bought you a beer. Go get it. Go enjoy it. Have a great time at Saddle Mountain. And thank you, Saddle Mountain, for doing all of that. That is super, super awesome.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder. This is why we love, 11-11-11, 11th minute, or I think it was 11-11 on 11-11. I think that's why it became Veterans Day. I believe.
I did not know this.
Yeah, I think that was the day that the Japanese surrender. I forget. But there was a big surrender on 11/11.
Okay.
Of World War II, I think, maybe World War I. But
right.
That's why it became Veterans Day for all that had served. And
so cool.
It's we need that reminder to look back at our generations and some in our own family and go, wow, we've had records of service. So my dad was in the Navy during Vietnam. My grandfather was a CB in the Navy during World War II.
CB's dope.
Yeah. Well, my grandfather's funny because he just passed away a couple of years ago, but he used to tell stories because he was stationed in China. So he was like scamming cigarettes off the boats and things of that
Our
nature.
grandfathers would have gotten along very well, yes.
Oh, yeah. And
similar stories on this side.
my grandfather loved to talk about how he got a foot fungus when he was serving. And he still got a check up until he died for the foot fungus disability.
What?
Yeah.
He got a foot fungus check.
in China. But he lived to be 92, so that's not bad.
And Rob can attest to this. He's known me long enough. I have a fear of wet socks. I have this fear of like not changing socks regularly because this was my grandfather brought home from the military for me. He did bring home a foot fungus for me. He saw people that he served with and fought with in battle losing their feet because of trench rot and all that nonsense. I mean, he was just dry socks, dry socks, dry socks. You just put the fear of God in me when it came to the socks. And just having a beer with my grandfather, having a beer with my dad, both veterans, was just some of the coolest things ever.
Yeah.
Because you get stories, and there's such different stories. My grandfather, 2 Purple Hearts. My grandfather, I have a letter from my grandfather to his mom saying, I am in the hospital right now. All I want to do is get back to my guys. I want to get back there. I'm letting them down. I'm in here. This is terrible. I need to go. Get me out of here kind of thing. And I mean, that kind of deal. And then my dad, he was in the Air Force. And he never really talked about his service too much. He never talked about it. And I was always baffled because I didn't know where he picked up. He was a scratch golfer. And I remember saying to my mom one time, I said, where in the world did Dad become a scratch golfer? He goes, oh, honey, his time in the Air Force, Vietnam, he managed a golf course. He managed a military golf course. That was his job.
Good gig if you can get it.
I guess so. He was assigned to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the draft and everything. He was assigned to doing that. He played golf through Vietnam.
Well, sure. Well, you have various levels of service, right?
Yes.
And, the military is a massive organization. And there are people that do paperwork. There are people that fight battles and learn how to drive tanks and, fly airplanes. There's all kinds of different levels of it. But nonetheless, you still signed up and did it.
Yes.
Wherever you got to sign, you got to sign. And if you can avoid the war, you avoid the war. Okay.
Our buddy Connor. I'm not going to say why he's our buddy because whatever. He's our buddy Connor. And he's a young kid. And he signed up for the National Guard. They were going to pay for his college and all that. So he signed up, super smart kid. And he said, I want to work on helicopters. That was his gig. And they sent him over to fight the California wildfires a couple of weeks ago. And he was flying over, repairing helicopters mid-air kind of thing, like about to die kind of noise. So if you think that everybody's kind of just serving right now or signing up and not being put in harm's way, that is a good example of the minute you put that pen to paper, you are signing a blank check to the government up to the value of your life.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
crazy.
Absolutely.
Crazy.
And it could happen in a training accident. It could happen. Look, we could have a war break out tomorrow. It could be something in the Middle East that, the United States has to get involved in. When you sign up now, during the time of terrorism, though we haven't talked about terrorism in 2 years,
Terrorist.
oddly, but it's a possibility. So it's still volunteering now. You're that first line that will go and defend America or protect the world in so many different circumstances.
And our buddies over at Arizona Elk Society today, they're working on a big Veterans Day event, a Veterans Weekend event, because I think it should be more than just a day. So Veterans Weekend event, they're doing it, the proceeds go to Heroes Rising Outdoors. Look into that organization. My goodness, talk about doing the most for our veterans. Heroes Rising Outdoors, just taking veterans. It started as Hunts for Heroes, which was wounded veterans and their families. They took them on guided hunts, fishing trips, things like that. Taught them all this great stuff in the outdoors, and the healing power of the outdoors was fantastic. So they've expanded it to something called Heroes Rising Outdoors, because it's so much more than just hunting and fishing. It's taking the whole fam out and healing. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better healer than nature. There's no question about that. So as we've modernized, we've gotten further and further from nature. So when you have those moments when you get to go be in nature, whether it's hunting, camping, or anything in between, it can be almost like a religious experience.
And it's where your soul says, okay, I'm right where I need to be.
Exactly.
And the outdoors is who we are. And it just starts to heal everything. It's magical. It's magical. You reset your sleep clock. You just being outside it just reconnects you with everything. The vitamin D and the fresh air and the physical healing and the mental and emotional. Unbelievable.
No question about that. When the Brewmance on the Radio continues, we're going to talk about cans and how cans have saved the day in the COVID-19 era. We'll be back in a moment here on 550 KFYI. Cans have saved the day for craft beer in the time of COVID. In fact, we're drinking out of a can right now.
Yes, we are.
Brewmance on the Radio. His name is Mike Russell. My name is Rob Hunter. Appreciate you hanging out with us. This whole idea behind the Brewmance is to get us together, put aside our differences, talk about our differences over a lovely craft beer. Mike Russell, what's the craft beer that we are drinking today for our beer of the week?
Historic Brewing, Flagstaff, Arizona, Oceanfront property, Arizona lager, which is obviously a giant nod to the GOAT, George Strait himself, King George.
You think he's the GOAT, huh?
Okay, wait. Can we talk about? We'll talk about his number one hits a little bit later. But yes, absolutely, he is the GOAT. Yeah,
I saw George Strait. We'll talk about that here in about 15 minutes.
Okay,
right here on the Brewmance on the Radio. But before that, cans. So Mike went to get these beers. Oceanfront property, Arizona lager by Historic Brewing Company, Flagstaff, Arizona. So note the Flagstaff, right? I have never before seen Historic Brewing's cans in a big store.
Nope.
No, maybe in a bottle shop you might be able to see them. Maybe if you go up to Flagstaff, you might see them. This has been the best part about COVID. Like, no joke. This is the best part about COVID. The number of craft brewers who have gone to canning lines, canned their beers, and put them in stores has been a blessing in disguise.
This has been great for our outdoor pursuits as well, because bottles suck in the outdoors.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to take bottles. Nobody should take bottles. Cans have been fantastic, and that we can take good craft beer. Our options, and I'm talking about maybe 8-9 years ago. Blue Moon, maybe in a can. I remember when Fat Tire came out in a can. I'm like, okay, I can take some craft beer with me along in the cooler. But bottles were it. You had to really decide what you were going to take, and you had to lower your standards. And by the way, I'm not saying that Blue Moon and Fat Tire is low on standards, because it's a great entry beer to the craft beer world. It was mine, Fat Tire, but there was nothing in cans. Now everything's in cans, and you can take really, and I mean really good beer in cans. Pliny is in cans. For the love of grief, they did a dry hopped Pliny for president. Oh, we didn't get our hands on it, but they did those in cans as well. So the good stuff comes in cans. It is fantastic. I love it. Love it. Thank you, COVID.
So Mike mentioned,
have you ever heard
Pliny.
that before?
If you're new to the craft, no, nobody yet. But look, if you want to find blessings, you can find blessings in anything. I mean, there's that saying that life happens for you, not against you. And if you believe that, like, okay, what have you been able to do over the last 8 months? You know what I've done, actually? I've had a lot more me time. I've had a lot more time in my home. I used to travel all the time. Mike knows this. Like every 3 or 4 weekends, Lady Brewmance and I pack up the car. We're going to Sedona, we're going to Flagstaff, we're going to wherever. We're flying here, we're flying there. I've been on a plane one time this year. This is the first time I've only been on a plane in one time, and I don't even remember. Probably like 2000 was the last time I was on a plane one time. But that's been okay. Like at first I was like, man, I'm not going to be able to travel because Lady Brewmance, had a milestone birthday this year, hit the big 4-0. We're going to take a big trip. But we couldn't do it because of COVID.
Day over 20.
It doesn't. It looks fantastic. But, it interrupted plans. So you're like, okay, let's wait it out, see what happens. And that's been okay. Because it turned out to be okay.
Yeah.
And then you add in, oh, look at all these new beers I get to try that I normally wouldn't because of COVID. I have 2 blessings.
I saw. I think it was Wednesday. I saw this article. Divorce rate in the nation down. It's down to like lows that we haven't seen in 50 years. Yeah, because you're kind of okay. You're stuck. You better learn to live with it. Mm-hmm. That's basically what it was in COVID. Yeah, you can find a silver lining in COVID. Absolutely. And I said it. If you want to call me mean, that's fine. You can call me mean. But I have a friend that knew a friend that died. Just. Something. If you want to find the bad in it, yep. You can find the bad in it. If you want to find the good in it, we'd rather sit down, have a beer, and find the good.
Well, and realize what you can control and you can't. Like if your friend of a friend of a friend did get it, that's not awesome. But you can only control how you feel and how you deal, right?
3 members of my family had it. Mm-hmm. 3. So I'm not being insensitive. I was very kind to them when they had it. Ish. I sent them a text to check in how they work.
That's a whole nother conversation, right? It's like, okay, it's life is life. Life goes on no matter what we think we could do to stop it, prevent it. People get sick. People don't get sick. I mean, if you don't know anybody affected by COVID, you probably know someone in your life that's died of cancer, that's been diagnosed with dementia.
And we were just talking about Veterans Day in the last segment. We're talking about veterans, like war veterans, frontline veterans that look and go, wait a second, you're afraid of what? Wait, there's a virus to kill. Wait, you didn't see people blown up in front of you? It really is a gauge on how sensitive you are to illnesses and death and how afraid of it you are. I'm not afraid. That's a weird thing to say. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not. I'm afraid of the really painful death. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's no fun.
But why fear it? You don't know if it's going to happen. So
exactly.
There's nothing to actually fear about that.
Nope.
And in this case, if you are nervous about contracting the virus, there are things that you can do, steps that you can take, limit your movements being the most important one to prevent or at least try to mitigate the risk of actually getting it. Yeah, exactly. So that's a very interesting point, Mike, about, I actually just went to Tucson last week, and I was in the desert shooting a video for Earn Your Booze, this company that Mike and I have done some work with. And I was with a Navy SEAL, a Marine, and a former Delta Force guy. And I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world that I'm like with these guys right now.
For real.
And just being around them and their presence was like knowing the things they have seen and the things they have done. And I was like, this is so cool. In addition to it, I was like the only non-person who served there because Justin was in the Navy, the founder of Earn Your Booze. And I'm like, man, the wisdom and the calmness that exists in this moment is amazing.
I respect every single person that you hung out with in Tucson last weekend. I truly do. But when you talk about wisdom and calm, a friend of mine was an underwater nuclear bomb technician. The level of zen this man lives in, the level, he's more an acquaintance, but a wife's friend's husband. So, it's that kind of thing. Hung out a few times, this and that, but I was picking his brain. I was like, are you kidding me? Dude, it was in Fallujah. They would bomb minefields and he would just go sweep the minefields with his crew. Mm-hmm. And they'd get bored the next day and do what? Go sweep the minefields again. Just,
something to do.
Yeah. And so, yes, I know exactly what you mean. I'm not trying to one up you. Being in that presence of that, what that experience brings to your soul and your psyche is, and I'm trying to put a silver lining on the COVID thing as we're trying to paint it here, is that there's kids right now that are growing up way too fast. Because they're growing up in an America that we didn't grow up in. They're growing up in America where they're locked down, where they can't go do things, where they're told they have to stay inside and be scared, where they're in their instincts, and all their instincts are battling this thing. It's like, no, that's not right. That's not how. Forget about America. I'm just talking about human instinct. They have to fight that, and they're struggling, and our young kids are struggling and having to grow up way too fast in this kind of thing. There's some similarities there that are I think are very valid.
Well, there's going to be long-term consequences too, and that's the challenge with what we're doing in this pandemic, in this shutdown, in keeping schools locked down, is essentially telling kids to live inside of that fear. And if you do this long, I mean, there's physical consequences to living in fear, living in stress to your body. And I don't want to go too much into detail because I'm not an expert on it, but I've had numerous conversations and I've read numerous things about it. It has to do with your stress levels. And your stress levels, when your body's stressed, you release a chemical called cortisol. And cortisol is like an inflammatory. And the more you're inflamed, the more likely you are to get sick. It's kind of this weird, ironic thing because your body's always fighting things. So it can't fight off viruses and diseases. So are we actually making this? And I don't know the answer to this question. It's just a literal question I have. Are we making the COVID pandemic worse because we are locked down and we have sort of strummed that guitar string of fear so much that it's literally causing our bodies to be nervous and scared and stressed out all the time, to have that cortisol levels go up? So maybe it's not now, maybe not in a year, but in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, there are going to be some consequences to this. And
that's what we preach here, not to simply just drink beer to get through it. That's not, we don't preach beer as a coping mechanism as much as a gathering to find that communal, the communal world, the communal ties that you have through craft beer that drop those levels, that release the stress, that bring back your people and bring back your family and your friends. And if you want to social distance doing it, that's fine. But sitting down and having a beer 6 feet away from somebody, that's fine. I went Midwest there. Hey, about 6 foot of that. Yeah. 6 feet away from somebody. That's cool. Go for it. And by the way, I looked it up right here. It's EOD. That's what he was. It was, that was explosive ordnance disposal,
Or the suit.
Yeah, the suit is more for the basically cleanup is really what that is. It makes it easier.
Yeah,
that's what he said.
Yeah, well, that's true. It doesn't stop the bombs. No question about that.
No, it doesn't. No.
When the Brewmance on the radio continues, we're going to review our beer, Historic Brewing's Oceanfront Property.
That's right, baby.
Coming next on the Brewmance on the radio, right here on 550 KFYI.
King George. Yeah, that's right. Just let it marinate. Just feel it right there. King George, the greatest of all time. George Strait. Yes, this is a tip of the hat to George Strait, our beer of the week. Thanks for tuning into the Brewmance on the radio, Arizona's only craft beer radio show. Our local beer of the week. Once again, Oceanfront Property, an Arizona lager. That's right. Rated King George's 6th best song in his list of #1 hits. Now, why do I call him the greatest of all time? Rob Hunter, how many #1 hits did George Strait have?
If I remember correctly, because I went to go see him in Vegas. It was a straight to Vegas is what they call it.
Nice.
And he had 2 nights. He performed half of his hits on one night and half on the second night.
Not hits.
#1 hits.
#1 hits.
So if I remember correctly, it was 22 each night, 44 #1 hits.
44 #1 hits. If you want to count them, there was a different category outside of Billboard as well. So it's technically 60 #1 hits.
Boss.
So when I say greatest of all time, I say the GOAT. Obviously, that is the GOAT. 60 #1 hits. An Oceanfront Property in Arizona, one of the best ever.
So we'll see if the beer measures up, because that's a tall order.
Well, it is a tall order.
Compare it to that. But I'm just going to compare it to a lager. Just kind of go over there.
All right.
So we'll rate and review our beer of the week here for you in just a couple of moments. So we didn't really give you stats about the cans from the last segment. So I just want to give you this quick nugget. So cans have essentially saved craft beer. And if you're new to the craft beer world or not in the craft beer world yet, if you go to like a Total Wine, if you go to a Bevmo, or even if you go to the grocery store, you're going to see a lot more choices. A lot of them local, like this one. You're going to see the big H that stands for Historic Brewing. Try it out. Like, this is the kind of beer that you give, and I'll get more into this here when we review it, but a lager kind of people drink your light or your light or buds. These are the kind of gateway beers to get in the craft beer world. So if you're a lager drinker or a Pilsner drinker, these are the kind of ones you do. So being able to put this in a can has been massive for Arizona Brewery. So our buddy Chip Mulala, who works at Husk Brewing, he's their Minister of Craft Beer, I think is what his official title is. Solid. He says prior to COVID, Mike, they were at a 85% of their, or it was a 50-50 split. So there's 50% cans, tap room sales, and 50% kegs going to restaurants, going to spring training facilities, wherever they can get their beer. Now they're 85% cans because you can't go out, no one's going out, limited crowds going out, get beers. So their keg sales have gone way down, but they've been able to put it in cans. So it's kind of saved their butts. And that's exactly what our buddy Brian Helton at Helton Brewing told us. He says, cans saved my butt.
They did, and they're easier for shelf space as well. They're easier to stack. They're easier to ship. They're easier. There's no bottle breakage, things like that. The quality of beer is better in a can than it is in the bottle. If you don't know, if sunlight is death to a beer, so sunlight getting through that bottle, no matter what the color of the bottle is, that's
Believe why the science.
That's right. That's why the bottles have gone from clear bottles to very dark bottles, or even with Rolling Arc, the green bottle.
No, not a good look.
Not a good look.
I mean, it's not good for the beer.
Yet still, now cans are basically the perfect way to ship and store a beer.
Plus, you can stack it like this. Boom.
Wait, you had two?
Boom.
How'd you get two?
Shh.
How did you get two?
You left it in the fridge,
That's
man.
messed up, man.
Yeah, it is.
That's why you said you're going to the bathroom.
Opportunity.
You're doing that.
Yeah, opportunity knocks.
Sure.
You got to take advantage of that opportunity. That's exactly what I did. Also, because we've been talking about connection, right? Like literally getting together, putting aside our differences, cracking open a beer, drinking a whiskey, whatever it is that you drink. Have conversations with people who disagree with you, because if you live in a bubble where only people agree with you, it's boring. Oh, you're reinforcing each other's thoughts and beliefs. Whoa, great. Challenge yourself. And the best way to do it, crack open a beer, because the libations kick in a little bit. Maybe you're a little bit more honest, maybe a little bit more forgiving, a little less judgmental. So here's a perfect example of what craft beer does. So there's a brewery up in North Phoenix called Simple Machine Brewing. There's a guy named Tyler Smith who wants to open his own brewing company. And he had a space picked out up in Cave Creek, but it fell through because where he's going to lease, the person that owned that sold it. So that fell through, and then the pandemic happened, and he had nowhere to go. So he had talked prior to opening his brewery to the brewers at Simple Machine Brewing Company, and they wanted to make that Black is Beautiful beer, which you have seen in several places. It was a beer designed to just, after George Floyd was killed, to say, look, this is craft beer's way of saying, let's be united. Let's come together and say, there's a problem in society. Let's go to the tavern, the brewery, talk about it, and hopefully solve it.
That's a great way to solve things.
Absolutely. Well, you think about it. We went over to the Beer Research Institute in Mesa about a month, 2 months ago, and Matt over there told us, it's like, look, this is where really the revolution started. Started as an idea, talked about in taverns. That's how they spread the word back in the day, so that we are free, literally because of beer and ale and cider and whatever else they served back in the day. So I love this concept, because what has happened after they brewed the Black is Beautiful beer, this guy, Tyler Smith, went to them and says, look, I can't open my brewery yet. And they were like, you know what? Why don't you buy a couple tanks, put it in our space. You can brew your beer right here until you are able to open your place.
Too cool.
That's cool. And Tyler Smith is on track to become the first Black-owned brewery in the Phoenix area. So that's pretty cool. That's really cool.
And I was hanging out with some people earlier from the government earlier in the week, and they were talking about that, well, we can't do this with this brewery because I think that the other brewery is going to get upset about that, or we might have a contract with this going on. And I said, whoa, I know those people. Did you ask them? Well, no, no, because I mean, it's with a different brewery. I know. Did you ask them? Because what a lot of people don't understand is the craft beer industry is unlike most other industries where competition is competition. It's fierce, it's ugly, and it's hidden. Smiles up front at the front counter. In the back, it is that person just opened up down the street and we are taking them out. The craft beer industry isn't like that by any stretch, at least here in Arizona. It is very inclusive. Everybody plays well. Everybody supports each other, and it's well, for the most part. There are some bad apples.
Always will be.
Always will be.
Life.
But for the most part, the craft beer industry in Arizona is the most inclusive, collaborative, and helpful group around.
And if we modeled that as politically engaged citizens, we might make life better for everybody. Let's just put it that way. So
true.
Let's review our beer of the week. Mike Russell brought it in. Historic Brewing Company's Oceanfront Property, Arizona Lager. A shout out to George Strait. You heard that song if you joined us at the very beginning of this segment. So this is a lager. It checks in at 4.8% in a nice yellow can. So Mike Russell, you want me to go first? You want to go first?
I would like you to go first.
All right. So Lagers are lighter. Typically, I'm a hophead. I like my hops. I like my bitterness. This is just a kind of an easy drinking beer. It's just, I'm already 1 3/4 in, over an hour. That is both the testament to the spirit, yet it is also the challenge, because it is easy to drink, because you might be sitting down and you're like 4 in before you even know it. But that's what lagers are designed for. I want to take it one more sip before I give you a score. We rate it on the Brewmance barometer, scale of 1 to 10. Mike and I give you a score. We divide it by 2 to let you know if we think you should try them.
Anything over 7, we say yes, that is something you need to have. And Rob is taking a very nice pull there, buddy. Give it a little swish around, you know.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with this beer. It tastes like a beer. It's crisp. I'm just going to give it, I'm going to give it 8.5. I mean, I'm struggling to find anything wrong with it. It tastes like a good lager, but you can tell there's a craftiness to it, if you will, because of how well it's made versus drinking a Miller Lite or a Coors Light or whatever. This just gives you a little bit of extra craftiness.
Now, when you take these lagers and you say it's a good step from the basics, the standard domestics, and go into the craft beer world, there usually is a lighter touch. Usually a lighter touch for that first step. This is a bigger step. This is more crafty. This is a little more beefy than a lot of those first step beers. And for me, as a beer guy, I appreciate that. Yeah, I give them more credit for that, because when I did see that, it's got the beach chair on the front. Yeah. It says Oceanfront property, Arizona lager. I thought, man, this is probably going to be super light, super crushable. And no, this is a craft beer. It tastes crafty. And if it was going to be one of those just light, I probably would have been in the 7.5, 8 range, but I'm going to match Rob's 8.5 on that, because this is a craft beer, and it's somebody that wants to take that step into the craft beer world. It'd be a good sip for them first time, or maybe get down to like a Huss Arizona Light Lager or something as like a step to this. I think it would be a good pathway.
It's got a little sweetness to it, this beer, the Oceanfront property, which, you know, if Arizona was Oceanfront property, we'd be like, yeah, this is pretty sweet. We're okay with that.
I just joked.
Yeah, well, because we'd be watching California float out to sea, like, bye, bye, guys.
See ya later.
We are the Brewmance. His name is Mike Russell. My name is Rob Hunter. This is Arizona's only craft beer radio show, but really it's a show about putting aside our differences, cracking open a beer, having conversations. So if you have ideas on how we can bring people together, let's do it. Hit us up on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at _Brewmance. Brewmance.beer is the website. Until next week, Saturday night, 6 p.m. We'll see you then.
Cheers, everybody.